नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतां स्वकथकृष्णः पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तनः हृदयन्तः स्तो हि भद्राणि विदुनोति सुहृत्सताम्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवति उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. I just want to read the translation of these invocation verses so that we understand why we are doing what we are doing. And this is helpful if we were to do it during each session, because sometimes when we take up the chanting of these invocation verses, over a period of time, we tend to forget the significance of why we are doing it. I have covered these verses earlier on in the first two chapters, but I think it's worthwhile for us to just read the translation before we go further. So, Narayanam Namaskritya, Naram Chaiva Narottamam, Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana, onto Naranarayana Rishi, the supermost human being, onto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and onto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. So this is basically touching upon the origin of Srimad Bhagavatam. The first time which Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken was by Naranarayana Rishi. Sri Narada heard from Sri Naranarayana Rishi and then conveyed the teachings of the Bhagavatam to Srila Vyasadeva. The blessings of Mother Saraswati, because she is responsible for all the faculties of learning. And then obviously we are paying obeisances to Srila Vyasadeva. This is a very powerful verse which allows us to read any kind of scripture. So even if you were to repeat this verse several times before you start any kind of scriptural reading, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, there are different verses, but this is a very powerful verse where you're touching upon different personalities who can assist us. Now let's listen to the next verse. Shrinvatam Swakata Kṛṣṇa Punyashravana Kirtana Hridayantah Stohi Bhadrani Vidunoti Suhutsatam. Sri Kṛṣṇa, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So this verse basically talks about the process. The process itself is hearing. Hearing Srimad Bhagavatam has been given such great emphasis that we repeat this particular truth every time we read Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing and reading. And when we hear Srimad Bhagavatam, practically Kṛṣṇa cleanses all kinds of material inebrities from the heart of a devotee who develops a sincere desire to hear. Yeah? So this is basically being said that Kṛṣṇa takes charge. So the auspiciousness of transforming our experiences in life and the auspiciousness of coming in touch with Kṛṣṇa through Bhagavatam is such that the moment you start hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, then the sincerity in our heart would automatically bring to us the transformations that are required, where Kṛṣṇa himself takes charge of the transformation. He is practically sitting in our heart. He's going to cleanse all kinds of material desires. See, what is the cleansing of material desires? The cleansing of material desires is the process of anartha nivritti. Amongst the several different stages of devotional service, sadhana bhakti, we talk about coming in touch with the spiritual master, receiving faith, coming in touch with the spiritual master, engaging and being very chaste to the instructions of the spiritual master, transforming our heart through such instructions, and hearing from the spiritual master, receiving faith through Srimad Bhagavatam. This results in anartha nivritti. This verse is practically saying the process of anartha nivritti, which is to give up desires that are not connected with Kṛṣṇa, that is not something which is going to require external endeavor. Hearing Srimad Bhagavatam would practically put the devotee through experiences where they would be able to cleanse this particular desire for material enjoyment. So anartha nivritti occurs when we come in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam and we make it a regular practice and our hearts are open to the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. Kṛṣṇa himself throws mercy upon us and creates an opportunity for anartha nivritti. So he practically removes the anarthas, things that have no meaning, from our heart, and he establishes himself. So faith increases. So initially faith is given, it is strengthened by the spiritual master. We come in touch with the sadhu. The sadhu basically inculcates deeper faith by speaking. We hear Srimad Bhagavatam, and then after we hear Srimad Bhagavatam, the sincerity with which we approach the topic and the sincerity with which we approach the sadhu through service, which is where the pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya verse of Bhagavad Gita 4.34 comes into mind, is where we sincerely serve the sadhu, and as a consequence, the sadhu is imparting whatever is in his heart or her heart into our hearts. And that causes Kṛṣṇa to also enter. Kṛṣṇa basically cleanses all desire for material enjoyment. So this whole process of anartha nivritti is such a simple factor if Kṛṣṇa were to get involved. In other words, this is practically a circumstance which Kṛṣṇa himself takes charge of when he is engineering. It is not something which we need to look at separately. We just have to listen to Srimad Bhagavatam, have the association of sadhus, engage in bhajana kriya, which facilitates the listening of Srimad Bhagavatam. What is the next verse? Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in the classes on Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. It becomes irrevocable when one attains higher levels of bhakti. It becomes irrevocable when one is almost in the stage of bhava, because at that point in time, the faith that we have in devotional service is strengthened by the relationship that we have with Kṛṣṇa. As we finish anartha nivritti, there are revelations which start coming to us in terms of our relationship with Kṛṣṇa. Then whatever efforts we are putting in with knowledge of the relationship with Kṛṣṇa. And once that particular stage is crossed and we go deeper and deeper into the relationship, and the relationship itself is established, it is irrevocable. It is like having a relationship with someone who is physically present in the universe, a member of the family. In that sense, till our bodies are destroyed, that relationship is irrevocable. The contact is irrevocable till our bodies are destroyed. Why is it so? Because there's knowledge, there are experiences, and you can't deny those knowledge and experiences. In a similar fashion, when one becomes deeply acquainted with the relationship with Kṛṣṇa, when one becomes completely acquainted with all that is to be learned about devotional service from Kṛṣṇa, then one has the ability to constantly engage in devotional service, and as a consequence, it becomes irrevocable. So what is being said here? Regular attendance in classes, serving of the pure devotee, it completely destroys, almost completely destroys, almost. Yeah? So this complete destruction occurs in prema, and there's almost destruction occurs because there is some amount of prarabdha karma which is still left for the devotee to have and be in touch with this world. Bhava bhaktas can have a little bit of prarabdha karma because that karma is required to remain in the body and to serve. Almost completely destroyed. So the point we are trying to make is the process of Srimad Bhagavatam practically paves the way for us to complete our journey in devotional service. And even if one were to make this their entire goal of life, to be regularly coming in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam, to regularly connecting with the sadhu, chanting of the holy names for us to be able to do the service to sadhus and to render service to Srimad Bhagavatam by hearing properly. Because without chanting, it is very difficult for us to cultivate a desire to come in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam. In fact, we can't conceive of service unless you chant. There are some of us who have general inclination to serve, but for us to serve consistently with more and more knowledge, and to grow spiritually, one needs to chant. And when we are chanting the holy names, engaging with sadhus in the mood of service, and also being able to come in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam on a daily basis, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Nityam. Nityam means that which is done daily. Nityam also means eternal. As a consequence, this is being done daily, but also constitutes an eternal service because the principles of Srimad Bhagavatam extend to eternality. It goes on much after we leave our bodies as well. It's eternal. So the point I just want to make is that these three prayers, the invocation prayers, have such profound significance in our lives that we should meditate on the meaning every day. And even if you were to read one or two verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, meditate on the meanings of the invocation verses, because they are practically telling us that investing time in Srimad Bhagavatam is the means of conquest. You're going to conquer over material energy with the help of Kṛṣṇa. You're going to conquer over death with the help of Kṛṣṇa by coming in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is quite profound. And if we don't meditate on these meanings before we go into the class, then what does happen is that over a period of time, this becomes quite mechanical, which is the nature of many things that we do. So it takes on this very repetitive, monotonous, mechanical, attitude. So one has to be very careful when you're coming in touch with these principles, because then you lose out if it becomes mechanical. So we'll get in touch with we'll continue with our reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. And today's chapter is quite profound. We spoke about it briefly in the previous session. What we did touch upon is the fact that material universes are created and they're destroyed. And they're created, and when they are created, they appear to be true. So temporarily they are manifest before us and then they disappear. Kṛṣṇa appears and he disappears from view. So everything in this particular world appears and disappears. Yeah, matter goes back into matter. Matter goes back and is transformed into matter. So you go back from manifested matter. For example, a manifested matter would be a universe which is functioning like ours. Or for example, you look at a city and the city has so many tall buildings, it has so many infrastructure, I would say arrangements which have been made. But if the same city is devastated, it happened in World War, where there was such heavy bombing in Europe that most cities were just flattened. That includes England. Some parts of England were just flattened. Whatever existed was just completely smashed. So sometimes material energy is manifest and then it becomes unmanifest. It goes back into primordial matter. So the destruction of these universes is like the destruction of clay that has been modeled, and then it goes back into primordial matter. It basically goes back into matter, which is primordial. So this completely misshapen clay with no identity is the origin of the manifested matter. And it exists eternally, that more primordial matter. That primordial matter, which is that particular ball of clay, for instance, is then impregnated with souls who start acting. And based on their conditioning, they create various infrastructure, they create buildings, etc. So that primordial matter becomes alive because you have souls who are acting, they're modeling the matter, they're taking it up in their hands. So for instance, you give an empty piece of land to someone, based on the creative propensity or their nature, they're going to build some things on the land, piece of land. So in a similar fashion, buildings occur, several dynasties appear, they start creating infrastructure based on the level of knowledge and their evolution. They start doing things based on what they can do, based on their conditioning. And then again, it reverses back. So the point we spoke of in the previous session was the fact that everything appears and it disappears. The Lord, whilst coming to the planet for his pastimes, manifests his pastimes and he unmanifests his pastimes as well. So Kṛṣṇa's pastimes in Vrindavan, as of today, they are unmanifest. Kṛṣṇa's pastimes in Mathura are unmanifest. Kṛṣṇa's pastimes in so-called Dwaraka, which is Dwaraka is sunk under the sea, it's in the ocean, is completely unmanifest. It is not seen. Yeah? So the point is, at some point, Krishna's pastimes were manifest, now they're unmanifest. But because this is the spiritual sky, because his pastimes are eternal, as a consequence, they are also constantly occurring in the spiritual plane. So when he descends to Vrindavan, he is coming with Goloka Vrindavan. So the spiritual plane is here in Vrindavan. But one cannot see his pastimes because at that particular age, when he's supposed to manifest his pastimes, he manifested his pastimes and then he unmanifested his pastimes. So we are still in the spiritual sky. And as our sadhana grows in Vrindavan, and as we become more and more absorbed and our consciousness reaches the level of where the consciousness ought to be for one to be a part of Goloka, the spiritual sky, then all the pastimes in Vrindavan become manifest. You can see those pastimes if the consciousness were to allow us to see such pastimes. So it's a matter of us being able to connect to that specific dimension, which is the spiritual sky, and that is done through the chanting of Harinam. So what is sadhana? Sadhana is particularly the objective of us being able to reach a certain level of consciousness where we understand who we are. And as we understand who we are and we desire service in that particular capacity, then that service and that understanding leads us further and further and deeper into experiences whilst being on this planet. So Krishna's unmanifest pastimes become manifest for the devotee who has attained that consciousness and has attained greed. He has attained intense greed to be able to participate and want to come in touch with the Lord in his particular personal capacity. Now, what is being seen here is that Krishna disappearing does not mean that the devotees lose an opportunity to interact with him. This is very critical for us to understand that there's a difference between unmanifestation of material energy versus the unmanifest nature of Krishna's pastimes. Krishna's pastimes are called eternal because they are still occurring in the spiritual plane. Material unmanifestation means it is going back to its original state, which is basically there is no identity, it is just a ball of clay. But Krishna's pastimes means if he becomes unmanifest, the material vision can't perceive his presence. If he becomes manifest in that particular state, which means the devotee has attained the ability to have a vision of the spiritual sky. The devotee is fully present on the spiritual plane. They're able to engage with people on the spiritual plane. That is the connection that is being brought forth by Harinam. That is the connection that is being connected by Harinam and by Srimad Bhagavatam. How is this happening? Because the more and more we focus on our eternal identity, the more and more we water the roots for our eternal identity, there would be deeper and deeper experiences of our eternal identity. This is exactly the discussion we had in the previous session. We had a discussion in the previous session that there comes a time when devotees have to understand that there has to be focused, absorbed engagement in devotional service. This focused, absorbed engagement in devotional service will have to come at the cost of other identities that we have established in this world. And what we mean by that is that we slowly, steadily have to understand that devotional service and re-establishing our identity in the spiritual world requires that we focus on that specific identity with utmost attention. When we do that, it will start yielding results slowly, steadily, as per the will of the Lord and the mercy of the devotees. It would start yielding results. Then there would come a time when our identity is established, then we can start interacting with the spiritual world while we are in this body, in this plane. Why? Because the spiritual world is eternal. It is always going on. It is unmanifest. We can't see it. We can't see Krishna because our consciousness is completely covered by material energy. the anarthas we have developed are nothing but our focus on multiple identities in this world at the cost of Krishna consciousness. When one learns more and more as they go along to be able to prioritize Krishna consciousness, then recognizing such prioritization, we are granted access to activities that are associated with the identity. It's a simple quest. If you do not know who you are properly, you can never understand the duties behind what you ought to be doing. And as a consequence, when duties are being imperfectly performed, one can never expect that they would have greater and greater opportunity in that particular identity. So in a similar fashion, we spoke in the previous session that if we want to enter into eternal pastimes, the path has been given to us, because eternal pastimes are exactly that. These are eternal. They are unmanifest, but they become manifest. They become more easily manifest to the devotee whose consciousness is equal to the consciousness in the spiritual sky. And as a consequence, they're able to participate, they're able to have conversations, they're able to have deeper realizations, experiences with residents of the spiritual sky. Why is it so? Because their conversations, etc., are in the same frequency now. Now they're able to see things. Now, this is not a hallucination. It becomes a hallucination if you can't validate such experiences with scripture. So, for most devotees who make advancement through the chanting of the holy names, there has to be validation through scripture. If there isn't a validation to scripture of experiences, then they have to be careful in assuming that such experiences are indeed the truth. Then it becomes speculation if we start thinking that whatever we are experiencing is the truth. So there has to be some validation with scripture. And that is the reason why we have scripture. Scripture qualifies our experiences as real or unreal. Reading of Srimad Bhagavatam qualifies our experiences. It says your experiences are real or unreal. So we come back to Srimad Bhagavatam, we come back to Chaitanya Charitamrita, then we understand, okay, what I went through was real because here's the proof. Yeah? The experiences of all the acharyas that we have had in our line have been recorded through their own writings. Their experiences have been recorded. So when you start reading Srila Raghunath Das Goswami's poems, when you start reading the poems of Narottam Das Thakur, when you start reading the writings of our previous acharyas, please understand that they are practically putting down in writing their experiences. Now, that is another way for us to be able to validate our experiences, is to see if it has been seen by a qualified person in our lineage. So what I'm saying is, this is real, it's eternal, it's unmanifest because we are not qualified. But as we focus more and more on the identity of being a servant of Krishna, then it starts revealing itself. And this is something which we all have to work towards. We spoke in the previous session about developing desires. Because if you don't develop desires to have these experiences, if you don't develop desires of wanting to focus exclusively on Krishna consciousness, if you don't develop desires of basically being able to go deeper, then what would happen is that we would never be able to rearrange our lifestyle and our life 10 years hence, 5 years hence, 20 years hence to suit that purpose. If you start desiring, then you have the opportunity to modify the future. That is the reason why desires are required. When do desires develop? Desires develop when you come in touch with those who are filled with such desires. When you come in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam, when you come in touch with those who are filled with desires, it is the duty of one who is preaching to cultivate desires in the hearts of the listeners. And this cultivation of desires in the hearts of the listeners is not a superficial task. It is not something which will just come by talking. It will also come because the speaker has the ability to inculcate and to deposit such desires in the hearts of the listeners. So it's important for us to understand that ours is a very dynamic, very, very conscious process, and it requires the use of free will. Nothing is being forced upon us. And it requires desiring, which is to modify the present. To modify the future, you need to desire. To overcome karma, you need to desire. Yeah, there are two aspects of experiences. One is that which you experience through karma, and the other is that which you experience through desires. Desires can overcome karma, so you can look at your life and say, I don't like this. I desire this particular future. If that particular desire is also accompanied with a powerful spiritual process, then you're literally creating a future. So that's the reason why devotees have to come to terms with what they are desiring. Because you are in touch with a very powerful process. You're in touch with Kṛṣṇa himself. You're coming in touch with Kṛṣṇa through the Nam, through Bhagavatam, through the deity. And when we have desires in the heart and they are unqualified, then what is it that you can do? Because you basically are bringing all those desires in front of the deity, all those desires when chanting Nam, all those desires when hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So devotees have to worry about what desires exist in their heart. Find a space for those desires, find and understand and take inventory. You would be surprised about how much is going on in our hearts and how much of it is connected to Kṛṣṇa. Even if you observe for one full day, you'll be surprised as to what is the predominant thought process that exists in our hearts. Take inventory and write down, because this is important. Write down, and then you would have the ability to see that there's a whole bunch of things which practically can lead us astray 10 years hence, just because our desiring process was not proper. That is the reason why Srimad Bhagavatam is saying Shrunvatam. That is why they say it's Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. It is not one day in a week. You need to do it every day, because every day as you come in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam, then your desires become more and more and more qualified. You start desiring a future based on scripture. Why am I saying this? It's because now our pursuit is basically dependent on desires, which is what Srimad Bhagavatam is trying to do. Now let's read this chapter. This chapter is all about Kṛṣṇa disappearing or unmanifest. The pastimes of the Lord becomes unmanifest. When he is leaving, there are all kinds of inauspicious omens and phenomena that are observed in the world. All kinds of inauspiciousness is being observed. And that's what we are seeing here. So let's just read through it again. Maharaj Yudhishthira said to his younger brother Bhimasena, I sent Arjuna to Dwaraka to meet his friends and to learn from the personality of Godhead Kṛṣṇa of his program of work. Since he departed, 7 months have passed, yet he has not returned. I do not know factually how things are going on there. Is he going to quit his earthly pastimes, as Devarishi Narada indicated? Has the time already arrived? Now, when Kṛṣṇa appears, Kṛṣṇa in Vrindavan is different from Kṛṣṇa in Mathura, is different from Kṛṣṇa in Dwaraka. Kṛṣṇa in Dwaraka is different from the different, I would say, Purusha-avataras of Karanodakashayi Vishnu, Shirodakashayi Vishnu, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, and then the different expansions. When Kṛṣṇa is unmanifesting his pastimes and he's going back, each of these personalities in the spiritual sky go to the respective places. Kṛṣṇa, there is the Kṛṣṇa who goes to Vrindavan, Goloka Vrindavan, right? Then there is Kṛṣṇa who goes back to Dwaraka in the spiritual sky. There's a Kṛṣṇa who goes to Mathura in the spiritual sky. And then his plenary portions, his expansions go to their respective places. When he descends on this planet, everybody is within him. So he's displaying so many different pastimes. He's displaying pastimes in Dwaraka. He's displaying pastimes in Mathura. He's displaying pastimes in Vrindavan. And then when he's leaving, because the spiritual experience in the spiritual sky are quite different, the different personalities of Kṛṣṇa go to the different areas. So it's quite interesting to see that there are different personalities who go back to their respective origins. So there are devotees in Vrindavan, their experience of Kṛṣṇa is very different. There are devotees in Dwaraka, their experience of Kṛṣṇa is very different. In Mathura, very different. And then Kṛṣṇa's expansions in the form of Vishnu avatars, very different. So different personalities go back to their different realms when Kṛṣṇa disappears from view on the material plane. When he comes into the material plane, he is non-different and he contains all of these pastimes. he shows the universal form to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. That universal form is a material manifestation because it also shows destruction. There's Kala, the time factor, which is being manifested. We read about it in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It's destruction. So that particular manifestation is the destructive aspect as well. So it is the material manifestation. So now Krishna shows the material manifestation, the universal form. There are some of the devotees who get very attracted to the universal form. They chant a specific prayer, mantra to that particular universal form, which contains the past, present, future. There are devotees who chant mantras associated with Dwaraka pastimes. There are devotees who chant mantras associated with the Mathura pastimes. There are devotees who chant mantras specifically to go back to Goloka, to Vrindavan. So different manifestations, different names, different pastimes, Krishna then goes to the different places. So the point we are trying to make is his unmanifestation from this planet, literally his disappearance from view here, simply means that his different portions and plenary portions and expansions are returning back to the spiritual realm in their different capacities. That's what it means. It doesn't mean there's any kind of end. It simply means that different aspects of who he is are going back to their origin. That's what it means. So there is a difference. When he basically leaves, it means that all the different personalities who are contained within him are going back to their pastimes in the spiritual sky. So this is an important consideration. So in the Bhagavad Gita, you find several statements by Krishna. And all these different statements by Krishna, many of them are spoken by his different expansions. What does it mean? He is practically talking as one person, Krishna. But the meaning of those statements, of who does that, is associated with his expansions. So Srila Prabhupada in this particular purport has given some statements. Whenever and wherever there's a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. Whenever and wherever there's a decline in religious practice, basically, where there's a decline in religious practice essentially means the mode of ignorance has risen to such an extent that it is unbearable. And he says, at that point in time, I will descend myself. Now, who is this person? Is this the same Krishna who is going to descend when the irreligion is going to be at the topmost level? No, this is Sankarshana. This is Shankarshana. Shankarshana comes to destroy. Whenever you see the Lord with weapons on the battlefield, engaging in a great destructive capacity, that is Sankarshana. So when he says that there is great irreligion, then the same Krishna who comes is Sankarshana. Yeah, there's a distinction between Krishna in the battlefield versus Krishna in Goloka versus Krishna here, Krishna there. Different manifestations. Now let's look at the next one. To deliver the faithful, to annihilate the miscreants, and also to re-establish the principles of occupational duty, I appear in every age. To deliver the faithful, to annihilate the miscreants. Sorry, one moment, please. I'm just going to turn this off. So basically, the different Krishnas who appear are basically different Krishnas who appear, and different statements that are being made in Srimad Bhagavad Gita are coming from different personalities. For example, there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita where he says, I am the seed-giving father of the universe. Who is the seed-giving father in the material creation? Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is the seed-giving father in material creation. You can also say, when he's saying, I am the seed-giving father to Arjuna, he is also referring to himself as Kṛṣṇa Vishnu. Yeah, because Kṛṣṇa Vishnu, as he lies on the causal ocean, he is the cause. He basically glances at material nature, and by glancing at material nature, he is impregnating material nature with souls. That glance, the personality of that glance is Shiva. So when he says, I am the seed-giving father, he is referring to himself as Shiva. So Kṛṣṇa doesn't say in this verse, I'm Shiva. He doesn't say that. He says, I'm the seed-giving father. But then who does that function? The expansion of that function, the function of Kṛṣṇa, who is doing that particular function of giving, impregnating material nature, is done by Shiva. So this is Kṛṣṇa saying, basically, I'm Shiva. In that function, I'm Shiva. So now, to deliver the faithful, to annihilate the miscreants, and to re-establish principles of occupational duty, I appear in every age. In this, you're seeing several aspects. To deliver the faithful, Vasudeva. To annihilate the miscreants, Sankarshana. Re-establish principles of occupational duty. Yeah, this is Aniruddha and Pradyumna. Now let us look at the second part. If I should cease to work, then all humanity would be misdirected. I would also be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all sentient beings. If I cease to work, work is a principle of passion. Intelligence is directly controlled by passion. So when one wants to create things, they need intelligence. The same principle of intelligence, creation, passion is seen in Pradyumna. He is the overlord of all of this. So the expansion of the Lord as Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Aniruddha, Pradyumna. Pradyumna is intelligence. Aniruddha is the principle of the mind. Yeah. So what we are trying to say is, basically, in the Bhagavad Gita, when Kṛṣṇa is making so many different statements, they are not necessarily referring to him as Kṛṣṇa. They are referring to him in his different capacities and expansions and plenary portions and avatars, etc. So that is very significant. When Kṛṣṇa disappears from the material realm in terms of unmanifesting his pastimes on the material sphere, one immediately should understand that the meaning of such statements of unmanifestation of Kṛṣṇa has a few aspects to it. Number one, it means that the eternal pastimes are still continuing. Number two, it means that the different portions and plenary portions and expansions of Kṛṣṇa have gone back to their original positions. Kṛṣṇa of Dwaraka, Kṛṣṇa of, Mathura, Kṛṣṇa of Vrindavan, Kṛṣṇa of different places, they have all gone back to their original position. What is destroyed? For example, there is also a particular thing. What has appeared and what has disappeared from view? What has appeared, as far as Kṛṣṇa is concerned, and disappeared from view, is a consolidated presence of all his expansions when he is on the planet. Disappearance means all the different manifestations of Kṛṣṇa going back to their origin. So this is quite significant to understand that when he appears, everybody is within him. And then when he disappears, everybody goes back to the different places. Because originally from Vrindavan, Kṛṣṇa and Vrindavan expands into Balaram. Balaram is Sevaka Bhagavan. He says, I can't afford to trouble you. I can't afford to have you stop your pastimes. All I can do is focus in giving you service and ensuring that your pastimes go on in a very nice way. So how do you do that? Balaram, Kṛṣṇa expands into Balaram. Balaram expands into Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Aniruddha, Pradyumna. And then there's a second expansion which occurs. Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Aniruddha, Pradyumna. Then from the Sankarshana of the first expansion, then you have Mula Sankarshana, which is the Mula Sankarshana who is in Dwaraka. Then you have Mahasankarshana. And then you have the Purusha avatars from Mahasankarshana. So the point is, these are all expansions who appear when Kṛṣṇa appears and then they disappear. This is exactly what we mean by appearing and disappearing of the Lord, especially from earthly pastimes. There is no such thing as it's over. It simply means they're all going back to their original station. So this is Yudhishthira Maharaj's realization. From him only, all our kingly opulence, good wives, lives, progeny, control over subjects, victory over enemies, and future accommodations in higher planets have become possible. All this is due to his costless mercy upon us. Just see, O man with the tiger's strength, how many miseries due to celestial influences, earthly reactions, and bodily pains, all very dangerous in themselves, of foreboding danger in the near future by deluding our intelligence. The left side of my body, my thighs, arms, and eyes are all quivering again and again. I'm having heart palpitations due to fear. All this indicates undesirable happenings. Just see, O Bhima, how the she-jackal cries at the rising sun and vomits fire, and how the dog barks at me fearlessly. O Bhimasena, tiger amongst men, now useful animals like cows are passing me on my left side, and lower animals like the asses are circumambulating me. My horses appear to weep upon seeing me. So he is talking about ill omens. I mentioned this in the previous week as well. Just see the pigeon. This pigeon is like a messenger of death. The shirks of the owls and the rival crows make my heart tremble. It appears that they want to make a void of the whole universe. Just see how the smoke encircles the sky. It appears that the earth and mountains are throbbing. Just hear the cloudless thunder and see the bolts from the blue. The wind blows violently, blasting dust everywhere and creating darkness. Clouds are raining everywhere with bloody disasters. The rays of the sun are declining, and the stars appear to be fighting amongst themselves. Confused living entities appear to be ablaze and weeping. Rivers, tributaries, ponds, reservoirs, and the mind are all perturbed. Butter no longer ignites fire. What is this extraordinary time? What is going to happen? See, there are so many omens that are coming forth with the disappearance of the Lord. Now, we spoke about some of this, and some of these were actually manifest even now. The calves don't suck the teats of the cows, nor do the cows give milk. They are standing, crying, tears in their eyes, and the bulls take no pleasure in the pasturing grounds. So something which is completely unnatural. The deities seem to be crying in the temple, lamenting and perspiring. They seem about to leave. All the cities, villages, towns, gardens, mines, and hermitages are now devoid of beauty and bereft of all happiness. I do not know what sort of calamities are awaiting us. I think that all these earthly disturbances indicate some greater loss to the good fortune of the world. The world was fortunate to have been marked with the footprints of the lotus feet of the Lord. These signs indicate that this will no longer be. O Brahmana Shaunaka, while Maharaj Yudhishthira, observing the inauspicious signs on the earth at the time, was thus thinking to himself, Arjuna came back from the city of the Yadus, Dwaraka. When he bowed at his feet, the king saw that his dejection was unprecedented. His head was down and tears glided from his lotus eyes. Seeing Arjuna pale due to the heartfelt anxieties, the king, remembering the indications of the sage Narada, questioned him in the midst of friends. Maharaj Yudhishthira said, My dear brother, please tell me whether our friends and relatives such as Madhu, Bhoja, Dasarha, Arha, Satvata, Andaka, and the members of the Yadu family are all passing their days in happiness. Is my respectable grandfather Surasena in a happy mood? And are my maternal uncle Vasudeva and his younger brothers all doing well? His 7 wives, headed by Devaki, are all sisters. Are they and their sons and daughters-in-law all happy? Are Ugrasena, whose son was the mischievous Kamsa, and his younger brother still living? Are Hridika and his son Kritavarma happy? Are Akrura, Jayanta, Gara, Sarana, and Satrajit all happy? How is Balarama, the personality of Godhead and the protector of devotees? How is Pradyumna, the great general of the Vishnu family? Is he happy? And is Aniruddha, the plenary expansion of the personality of Godhead, faring well? Are all the chieftain sons of Lord Kṛṣṇa, such as Susena, Charudeshna, Samba, the son of Jambavati, and Rishabha, along with their sons, all doing well? Also, Shrutadeva, Uddhava, and others, Nanda, Sunanda, and other leaders of liberated souls who are constant companions of the Lord, are protected by Lord Balarama and Kṛṣṇa. Are they all doing well in their respective functions? Do they who are all eternally bound in friendship with us remember our welfare? Is Lord Kṛṣṇa, now he is coming to the question that he was very afraid to ask because his intuition was already telling him that something has happened to Kṛṣṇa. Is Lord Kṛṣṇa the supreme personality of Godhead who gives pleasure to the cows, the senses and the Brahmanas, who is very affectionate towards his devotees, enjoying the pious assembly at Dwaraka Puri, surrounded by friends. Quite significant that there's a statement here in this particular purport by Srila Prabhupada, where Krishna is being called, I'll read the verse, Bhagavan api Govindo Brahmanyo Bhaktavatsalah Kachit Pure Sudharmayam Sukham Aste Suhrid Vrataha. So he's being called Api Govindo, Bhagavan Api Govindo. So the Brahmanyo Bhaktavatsalah. So he's basically being called several things. He's being called the one who gives pleasure to the cows and the senses, Govinda. So what is so significant about this is the fact that, and this is actually a remarkable fact, here Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, he says, a society devoid of cow protection and Brahmanical culture is not under the direct protection of the Lord. A society devoid of cow protection and Brahmanical culture is not under the protection of the Lord. This is so true. It is so true because a sure short strategy to remove the practice of Vedic culture is to encourage the killing of cows. Sure shot. In a state, in India, for instance, in states where cow killing and beef eating is prominent, you will not find proper Vedic culture. Vedic culture disappears. The conversion of people in that particular state into Christianity and Islam is extraordinarily manifest, because Vedic culture is directly killed by the non-protection of cows. The non-protection of cows is so important because basically the non-protection of cows can destroy the ability of Vedic culture to exist. This is so true. And here Srila Prabhupada basically is making a statement. That is why Krishna is called Govinda. Yeah. Now, what is Prabhupada saying is that Srila Prabhupada is saying, if you find society which is not protecting the cows, then you should understand that that society is not under protection of the Lord. It is not under the protection of the Lord. And he is saying very clearly, without cow protection and the cultivation of Brahmanical qualities in human society, at least for a section of the members of society, no human civilization can prosper at any given length. This is so true. Now in India, you notice that there are laws against the killing of cows. But in India, you find that the cows are all over the place. You find them on the roads. You find them blocking traffic, which is very much happening in Vrindavan. Nobody minds. We just kind of stop and then we push the cows around and then we walk. The rickshawalas basically tap them and then they keep going on. So nobody minds in Vrindavan. But this is basically a sign that even though there is the so-called cow protection, it is not being implemented properly because they're on the road. They eat plastic, they eat garbage. The farmers who have dairies, they can't feed them. They let them loose on the road because they don't have the resources to feed them. And you find them wandering around. And as a consequence, people start questioning us when we start talking about Vedic culture and cow protection. They start saying, this seems to be a farce. This seems to be a hypocrisy where you find these animals littering the road and then you say that they're worshipable. Yeah, because they seem to be a nuisance. They seem to be blocking roads, blocking traffic. They eat garbage. This is the issue with talking about things without being able to implement them. And it is seen the most in India, the most, because this is spoken of in India where they talk about cow protection and culture, but nothing is done in a practical sense. Very little is done. Nothing much is allocated. That's why we lose credibility when we start making all these claims that cow protection and Vedic culture and the presence of the Lord are all connected. So this is an extraordinarily important limb of our devotional service, protecting cows. If you want Vedic culture to thrive, there can absolutely be no question of beef eating. There cannot be the killing of cows. It cannot be. That's the reason why Srila Prabhupada basically made all these statements, because you can see it manifest. You can see it manifest in India in some states where beef eating happens. There you find the Hindus eating beef, the so-called Hindus. And very soon you find that the population majority shifts and Christianity and Islam start dominating that particular place. So we are not talking about the political aspect of any ideology or religion. I'm just talking about a practical change that is being observed, where this cultural issue comes up, where cow killing can completely debase and remove Hindu and so-called Vedic practices from the planet of the earth. So if one has to start anywhere in their preaching, you have to harp on ensuring that this doesn't happen. So promoting vegetarianism as a part of our preaching is absolutely essential, not simply because people have to come to the mode of goodness, which is actually necessary, but more so because if they were to harm cows, which happens in the West all the time, because people can't really distinguish, they have no idea why they're doing what they're doing. They eat because it's available. You will have to ensure that this is being protected, because if you start promoting this and you start protecting the eating habits, especially protecting cows, you will find that it's easy to introduce Vedic culture. This is a preaching strategy. There has to be some conceptualization of how this can be done, especially in the West. Yeah, and there are many medical reasons to do it. There are many medical reasons to do it, because red meat has been found to be extraordinarily, I would say, harmful and unsuitable. All meat, but red meat more in particular. So the point I'm just trying to make is that this is an extraordinarily important feature of our ability to reestablish any kind of Vedic culture in different parts of the world. So you do your Harinam, we encourage habits such as vegetarianism, we encourage those who are wanting to go the vegetarian way without trying to impose many other restrictions on them. A preacher has to be very sensitive. If someone is vegetarian, encourage them to that most. Yeah, encourage them without actually making them feel that they have to do a lot more to be appreciated. Appreciate vegetarianism. It's important, because that will sow the seeds for the growth of Vedic culture. That will bring protection from the Lord. That will allow us to introduce aspects of so many different aspects of Kṛṣṇa consciousness in a more easy way as preachers. So this is important. I was just wanting to mention it because sometimes we don't see the connection, but this is an observed connection. If you kill cows in that region, you can't really basically introduce Vedic science. It's a very big challenge. So promoting vegetarianism, promoting how people have to live is actually an extraordinarily useful and rudimentary preaching. So in any particular area, you have to have multiple levels of preaching. There have to be levels of preaching where you simply address these aspects. You encourage vegetarianism. You encourage people from developing good habits, or you simply encourage abstinence from cow killing in certain ways, innovate ways for them to see that this is wrong. You don't even have to touch on religion. You could even go on the scientific route and promote it. Reason why? Because as you promote that particular aspect more and more wherever you are, then you will find it easy to reintroduce other aspects of Vedic culture and Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Obviously, Harinam should always go on, because that is how we are going to transform things. But you need to create a society around you which can appreciate all of this, and that requires certain ingredients. So you can't have a one-pronged preaching style. You have to have it, thought about in different areas, different places, encouraging different aspects of Vedic culture so that we can introduce Kṛṣṇa consciousness. It requires some strategy. I was just wanting to mention it because it's such a critical statement which Prabhupada has devoted here. The original personality of Godhead, the enjoyer, and Balarama, the primeval Lord, Ananta, are staying in the ocean of the Yadu dynasty for the welfare, protection, and general progress of the entire universe. And the members of the Yadu dynasty, being protected by the arms of the Lord, are enjoying life like the residents of the spiritual sky. Simply by administering comforts at the lotus feet of the Lord, which is the most important of all services, the queens of Dwaraka, headed by Satyabhama, induce the Lord to conquer the demigods. Thus the queens enjoy things which are prerogatives of the wives of the controller of thunderbolts. Yeah? So basically, what is also being said here very clearly is that offering the simplest of services, the queens of Dwaraka basically had more opulences and equal opulences as Indraloka and other higher planets. Yeah. So this is also a statement where the opulence of higher planets was already present wherever the Lord was in Dwaraka. The great heroes of the Yadu dynasty, being protected by the arms of Lord Sri Kṛṣṇa, always remain fearless in every respect, and therefore their feet trample over the Sudharma assembly house, which the best demigods deserved, but which was taken away from them. Yeah. So this is basically comparing the opulence of the Yadus because of Krishna's presence with the heavenly assembly. The heavenly assembly is called Sudharma. So it's like an assembly house, like the modern day parliament. And the opulence of the Yadus was such that it was equal to, and the interactions of the Yadus was equal to the heavenly assembly, which is called Sudharma. So that was the kind of flourishing which Dwaraka was seeing because of Krishna. My brother Arjuna, please tell me whether your health is all right. You appear to have lost your bodily luster. Is this due to others disrespecting and neglecting you because of your long stay at Dwaraka? Has someone addressed you with unfriendly words or threatened you? Could you not give charity to one who asked, or could you not keep your promise to someone? You see, Kshatriyas losing the ability to fulfill promises is equal to death. That's the reason why when Arjuna looked so pale, Yudhishthira was asking him, could you not give charity to one who asked? Or could you not keep your promise to someone? Both of these are like death for a Kshatriya. You're always the protector of the deserving living beings such as the Brahmanas, children, cows, women, and the diseased. Could you not give them protection when they approached you for shelter? Have you contacted a woman of impeachable character? Or have you not properly treated a deserving woman? Or have you been defeated on the way by someone who is inferior or equal to you? Have you not taken care of old men and boys who deserve to dine with you? Have you left them and taken your meals alone? Quite significant. Have you not taken care of old men and boys who deserve to dine with you? Have you left them and taken your meals alone? It's almost as if you really haven't taken care of the atithi, the guests. And Yudhishthira considered it so important to make this statement saying, you look crestfallen, you look pale, you lost your luster. Is it because you didn't take care of people who wanted help? Did you just eat selfishly when someone else wanted to be fed? Did you refuse an old man and young boy, in terms of people? So, which is considered to be quite significant that he's even asking this. Or is it that you're feeling empty for all time because you might have lost your most intimate friend, Lord Kṛṣṇa? Oh, my brother Arjuna, I can think of no other reason for you becoming so dejected, because he's dismissing all his previous questions. I've asked you why you feel dejected, and I've completely rejected all of that. You must be looking the way you look, and you must be feeling the way you are expressing yourself, because Kṛṣṇa has departed. That is the last verse of this chapter. We spoke a lot about disappearance. We spoke about the aspect of disappearance. We spoke about the opportunity in Kṛṣṇa consciousness. The opportunity we have been given is for us to basically view and participate in the unmanifest pastimes of the Lord. That is the opportunity we have been given. So it's of utmost importance for us to recognize the opportunity and to take advantage of the opportunity. And the way you take advantage is that there is a need for us to recognize that there is a need for us to focus on that particular identity. Krishna's servant, the identity of being Krishna's servant, if one cannot focus on that specific identity and desire to spend as much time as required and as possible, if not now, at least in the future, if we don't have active desiring, then we could basically be spending several years of this lifetime missing an opportunity for us to be able to move forward. So let us be very clear that if we want to be a part of the unmanifest pastimes, whilst being in this body, which is the goal of Krishna consciousness, it requires that we establish an identity connected to Krishna. That identity of being connected to Krishna in the spiritual sky will be revealed to us after we have completed the process of anartha nivritti. It will be revealed slowly after that, in stages. But after the process of anartha nivritti is complete, the process of anartha nivritti essentially means we are clinging on to so many different identities in this world, and we are watering those different identities. We are watering those different identities more than we are watering our Krishna consciousness. So that's what this means. So basically, what we are trying to say is that it requires us to water the identity of Krishna consciousness fully. That requires us to come in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam on a daily basis. Nityam Bhagavata Sevya. Anartha Nivritti, which is to remove our focus on so many different identities and for us to develop a deeper taste into the identity of Krishna, being associated with Krishna, happens when we come in touch with Bhagavatam, when we come in touch with the sadhus, when we come in touch with, what do you call it? The Nama, Harinama, and we start serving the deities, etc. So what we are trying to say basically is that the unmanifest pastimes will become manifest when we basically reach a single pointed focus on wanting to be a part of that. Krishna is demanding single pointed focus. We would not know how to serve him if we do not know who we are in our relationship with him. That requires our being able to prioritize our connection with him. That requires purification, the purification from other aspects of our existence. It doesn't mean you give up on your existence in the world, but it simply means that you really start focusing on the eternal connection. So I'll end here and I'll take some questions. Any questions?
Yeah, Hare
I
Krishna.
can't hear you if you're speaking. Whoever is speaking. Sorry.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
It's not a question, but I have a comment here. Like when it comes to society divide of cow protection and Brahmanical culture is not under the protection of Lord. The way I'm seeing the society around, even within family, we are facing a lot of challenges. Like women are not ready to follow certain customs which we used to follow. Suppose simple things like wearing bindi or wearing saris and these things. Sometimes because in the corporate world and working culture, they're fast changing their way of dressing, their way of hairstyles, all this. And if you see outside also in corporate, even in cities like Indian cities like Bangalore, other cities, we are seeing women also smoking, drinking. And when you question, like when you friendly talking with colleagues, why you are doing this, why can't we do when men can do, we can't do this, like this type of questions. Is it like they should be competing in degradation as well? Is it men doing it's okay, or women doing is more
I think you answered the question
hmm.
in your statement. And
Yes,
the reason
Prabhu.
I'm saying this is because if men who are supposed to protect society with rules, regulations, following things, if men start degrading themselves, especially if those who are in leadership positions, then those who are supposed to follow would also degrade themselves. So in Vedic society, the responsibility of leadership lies with those who are of a higher nature. So the Brahmanas are supposed to lead because they have higher consciousness. If the Brahmanas don't lead properly and they set a bad example, the rest of society would also fall apart. In a similar fashion, if the male in the family can't set a proper example, then the children and other people in the family, the women, they would also fall apart. This is basically the culture which has come about because different areas of leadership have failed us. That is the reason why it's important for each and every one of us to take up responsibility and to be able to act in that manner where others could take inspiration, they could follow us. So you answered your question by saying that when a woman is saying that I am doing all of this, I am drinking and I am smoking because this guy, a man is doing it, so why shouldn't I do it? Then what I'm trying to say is that it is a responsibility of everyone to set examples. So we should start with the example setting process of leadership, from the men. Then slowly, steadily, everybody else would also fall in place. So this was exactly what was suggested. If the Brahmanas fall down, the Kshatriyas will fall down. If Kshatriyas fall down, the Vaishyas will fall down. Vaishyas fall down, Shudras will fall down. Shudras will take over society. So what we are seeing now is a manifestation of the Kali Yuga in different ways, where there's a massive failure of leadership. Because there's a massive failure of leadership at so many different levels, there is no authority. And what is taken as authority is whatever is considered to be the norm in society. Whatever is the norm. What do you mean by that? Meaning, my neighbor is doing it, the neighbor opposite is doing it, my cousins are doing it, my brothers are doing it. As a consequence, what's wrong with it anyways?
Yes.
So everybody takes up. So what I'm trying to say is, I think there's a necessity to first fix ourselves. And when we fix ourselves very nicely, then we become examples for rest of society. And when I'm saying fix ourselves, I'm not talking about specific gender. I'm talking about both sides of the aisle, men and women fixing themselves, because both genders are playing leadership roles. They have their capacity of leadership. Men have the capacity of leadership. So when everybody starts pulling in the same direction, directed by Shastra and the Kṛṣṇa, then everything is fine. So I think, the starting point is we have to fix ourselves first. And when we fix ourselves first, then we become precepts. Others would be inspired to follow. And once others follow, then more will follow, etc. So it's important to do this very carefully.
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, one more observation, Prabhu. Like when it comes to cow killing, all that. When I particularly face difficulty talking to people from Kerala, even though they are Hindus. Like they still eat cow meat. When I point out that it's completely wrong, what's wrong? Like they completely can't understand. Like it's like when you eat goat or chicken, there is nothing wrong in eating cow also. It's like another animal like that. When people their intelligence level go to that level, it becomes difficult. And I get wonder like why don't Kṛṣṇa punish them, give them some reactions within some certain short period instead of waiting till the next lifetime, because they are not able to understand that how it is sinful, because as long as their material life is going on good, they are not understanding it's sinful certain things we are doing.
True. See, the point is as follows. Degeneration and destruction are seeds that are sown along with birth. Whether we are going to degenerate, destruct, and then go down into species of life which are of even lesser consciousness, where we keep losing opportunity after opportunity, or are we going to use this lifetime for us to be able to ascend and for us to be able to move further up in consciousness? That freedom has been given. So the point is, how is someone going to destroy themselves? That destruction is already sown in when they take birth. So they have to recognize that there is an opportunity for destruction, there's an opportunity for moving forward. So when you say that should Kṛṣṇa punish them and should Kṛṣṇa give them immediate reactions so that they could stop, it happens every once in a while. You have diseases come through that which are extraordinary. It happens once in a while because the society basically degenerates in different ways. The point I'm trying to make is that this is destruction. This is destruction, where the human being becomes an animal. Slowly, steadily, they are degenerating themselves. They lose their faith. and then they degenerate themselves into animal life, even though they have a human body. And there's enough opportunity which is being given, especially if you're born in this part of the world, in India. There's an opportunity given to recognize it. But I'm also saying, along with the opportunity to recognize that they should not do certain things, there has to be some sincere respect for the cows. If you let the cows loose on the road, and then they are blocking traffic all over the place throughout the country, and then you start claiming that cows are important to us and they're sacred, then it's a hypocrisy. This hypocrisy makes people lose faith even more. So what I'm saying is that all good qualities are lost due to poverty. A country like India is poverty stricken. They have a wonderful history and heritage and Vedic culture, but they can't really produce anything of value and promote this to the world because of their poverty, because all those good qualities which India has to offer is covered over in the inefficiencies that come about because of lack of resources. So the Indians have to think about it, saying, okay, should I protect the cow or should I get this guy 3 meals a day? So the prioritization basically becomes completely different because there's poverty. So what I'm trying to say is that more and more people's consciousness, if it is impacted positively, then there can be mass change. So we should focus our limited resources in trying to impact consciousness. We should focus our limited resources in getting the message out to as many people who are willing to listen as possible. If there are those who are not willing to listen and very difficult for us to even do things properly, then we should concentrate our resources in places where we can do things properly. I have spoken to so many preachers, and I'm talking about 30 years back, preachers who have been preaching in Kerala. It is one of the most difficult preaching areas ever. You can preach in the West, you can preach in Islamic countries. Kerala is one of the most difficult places to preach. This is the opinion of many stalwart preachers who have spent years and years and years, on the roads of Kerala. Very difficult. First, they had communism. Communism as a political ideology basically promoted godlessness. Because they promoted godlessness, they rejected all kinds of religion because it was politically convenient. The government itself wanted to introduce all kinds of opposites of what religion is supposed to do. They introduced cow killing. When they introduced cow killing, because it was communist, as a consequence, you had the flourishing of other religions, because cow killing automatically promotes others. So what I'm trying to say is a lot has happened in that area, and it's not very easy for us to work on that area, and it's easier for us to work on other areas. So there's so much work which is required in so many different parts of India and also the West, that I think our resources should focus there.
Yes, bro. Yeah, that's true, bro. Thank you, bro.
Sure. Any other question or comment?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, talking about anattaneviti, without introspection, I think if you don't, this is more, I don't know whether I'm right. Introspection is very important to you, at least to understand. Otherwise, you will never be able to come to that. It's not a stage; it's a gradual process to come to anattaneviti if you don't introspect. Is that correct? Because you may be coming out of all the anarthas, but then it is impossible. You may be doing small mistakes with the devotees, with even chanting. So, but it's only way that you will understand if you really wanted to do introspection, like every week, what happened to me. Is that right? Is it a good way to do that?
There has to be periodic introspection.
Yeah.
Because one of the greatest difficulties with Krishna consciousness is the fact that it is a very long process in terms of number of years that one takes for us to reach different levels of, I would say, advancement, if you were to consider it as the first lifetime when someone is advancing. So because it is a 40-year, 30-year period, then what does happen is there's a certain mindset which comes in where we become complacent. And the complacency sets in because we think that whatever we are doing today is good enough. The unrest or agitation of the mind of not being satisfied with what we are doing today can be achieved through a little bit of introspection on whether there's scope for improvement. So as a consequence, we need to combine the process of sadhana bhakti with regular inventory taking methods and regular attempts to improve and regular attempts to measure things. So how will we measure and how will we reflect? How will we even know what is going wrong if we don't, introspect? So as a consequence, what I'm saying is we don't need to live in the fiction of the mind. Sometimes people think introspection means we are working with the mind. And yes, there are subtle attachments and we may not even know those things exist and there could be so many problems. What I'm saying is we don't need to work with so many subtle things. We can work with our general existence in Krishna consciousness. We can put down the most important pillars and the foundations of Krishna consciousness, such as the number of rounds we chant, how attentive and how good quality rounds we are chanting, how much importance are we giving on a day in terms of giving time to chanting. Right? Sorry?
No, sorry. No, I'm with you. Sorry. There's a disturbance there. Sorry, Prabhu.
Okay, so basically, how many rounds have we chanted? What is the quality of our chanting? What is it that we can do to improve upon it? What is the quality of our reading of Srimad Bhagavatam? How regular are we? What is the quality of our service? The point is, we don't need to depend on anything subtle, which we can't fully understand and see. We can completely depend on what is fully manifest as a devotee's life and see whether we are making progress or not making progress. And we can make some small improvements. Do I have an interest in chanting? Do I have an interest in reading? Am I better than I was the previous year? Or is it worse off? See, these are questions that need to be asked. This is introspection. Devotees who are very eager can introspect on a daily basis. They can introspect on a weekly basis, depending on what they want to see. If you become more and more observant around you, then Krishna would reveal things which can be improved upon. So I guess that's the point I was wanting to convey.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Sure. I'm just reading from chat, so I'm just going to answer that. Just give me one moment, please. So I guess the question which is being asked of is that, I think it's a different kind of question. The question is, there are 4 bona fide sampradayas in the Vaishnava philosophy. There's the Brahma Madhva, which is, we are basically Brahma Madhva Gaudiya. Then there's really the Madhva Sampradaya, Sri Sampradaya, Kumara Sampradaya, and then you have the Rudra Sampradaya, or the 4 different bona fide sampradayas. All of these bona fide sampradayas have a foundation of accepting Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Depending on the flavor of the Acharya's mood in interacting with Krishna, in one sampradaya you will find that their focus is on Narayana, and this is Krishna in a more formal Aishwarya Rupi form in Vaikuntha, where he is basically worshipped with all kinds of opulence, and there is definitely Madhurya, there is sweetness in Lord Narayan, who is basically being worshipped. But the sweetness of Lord Narayan is covered over by the opulence of Lord Narayan in Vaikuntha. So the Sri Sampradaya focuses on Lord Narayan. Now, for them, Lord Narayan is the origin, and Kṛṣṇa is an avatar of Lord Narayan. We basically are saying Kṛṣṇa is the avatari because he contains all the rasas. Kṛṣṇa in Vrindavan specifically is such that all the opulence of him as being the supreme person are covered over by the sweetness of Kṛṣṇa. So in Vaikuntha, there is Aishwarya, which covers Madhurya. In Vrindavan, Madhurya covers and overwhelms Aishwarya. So in one sense, they're not different. In other sense, you definitely can say that the destination, desire, goal, the mantra are very different. So which one to follow? The which one to follow question basically is a matter of our adherence and our surrender to the lineage that we want to follow. Should I pull up someone who is a Sri Sampradayi and say that you are absolutely wrong because you're not really doing what we are doing? Absolutely not. That is not the right thing to do. Can someone who is on their way to Vaikuntha, in Sri Sampradaya, can they pull me up and say, why are you not doing what we are doing? What is the point of Goloka? Come to Vaikuntha? That is wrong too. So the point is, how are we motivated and who is motivating us and what we need to do? Yeah. So the point which we're trying to say is, where is it that we can offer our allegiance to? Whom do we surrender to in terms of the Guru? I have noticed one thing, and I would like to share that. Neither is wrong. Being a part of our Sampradaya and approaching Kṛṣṇa in Vrindavan and surrendering to him is definitely not a contradiction to someone who is approaching him as Narayan in Vaikuntha. Both are approaching at different levels. So one cannot really say one is right and one is wrong approach. It's a matter of desire. It's a matter of being satisfied with the interaction, either with Kṛṣṇa as the opulent form or with Kṛṣṇa where there's only this very, I would say, informal connection that we have in Vrindavan. There's a difference. So it's a matter of taste. Depending on the parampara, that taste is cultivated. In Lord Chaitanya's parampara, the idea of interacting with the Lord in his sweetness in Vrindavan is our goal. All our acharyas have only given information about that particular goal. They foster it. Our entire program is designed around reaching that conclusion. Sri Sampradaya has an entire program of taking its devotees to Vaikuntha, to Lord Narayan. Not a bad place. It's definitely Vaikuntha. It is Lord Narayan who is also Kṛṣṇa. So the point I'm trying to make is it depends on our taste, depends on our inclination, depends on the lineage which we are associated with and we are attracted to. And we really can't say one is right and one is wrong because this is a very personal motivation. If someone is motivated by Lord Narayan, then that is what they are pursuing. If someone is motivated by Kṛṣṇa and Goloka, that is what they are pursuing. So this is definitely a very personal choice made by motivation and who can motivate us and how we need to follow. But the bottom line is as follows. If you chant Hare Krishna, you will definitely reach wherever you want to reach. That is the first point. Second is that if you read Srila Prabhupada's books, everything becomes lucidly clear where you can still make choices to go wherever you want. So the point I'm trying to make is, regardless of where we want to go, the process we follow of chanting Harinam and the process we follow of reading Bhagavatam will assist us. So we don't need to worry so much about the differences. And there is nothing wrong in accepting that there will be people who are going to Vaikuntha. There's nothing wrong in accepting that there might be devotees who are very attracted to going to Vaikuntha. That is natural because Vaikuntha and Lord Narayan have their own following. Just as much as Kṛṣṇa in Vrindavan has his following, Kṛṣṇa in Dwaraka has his following, So there are different gradations. So this is diversity. And it's a very personal choice. And it is a matter of being inspired by the Sangha with devotees and gurus of such sampradayas. So one can't really say one is right or one is wrong, or one is superior, one is inferior. One can definitely say that if one requires Sangha, the arrangement made by Srila Prabhupada is indeed wonderful, because you get Sangha wherever you go around the world. There's an opportunity for service, and one can basically take advantage of those. I hope that answers that question. They wrote to me privately, whoever it was, so I didn't want to broadcast the name, but I just wanted to answer. Is there any other question?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Prabhu, when it comes to personal choice, see people praying to Sai Baba, like Shirdi Sai, Satya Sai. I'm seeing a lot of people around me, like my relatives, all that. With whatever knowledge I have, if I try to convince them, like this is not bona fide, or nowhere it's mentioned about Sai Baba in Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, immediately the question comes like, no, it's as you believe in Kṛṣṇa, we believe in Sai. What's wrong in it? And if you say it's not in the scripture, who knows that scripture also written by people only? So we also have scripture like this Sai Charitra, something they say, and it becomes very difficult. And should we leave it to them, or is there a way to convince people, or is it that is also okay? Or because some people sometimes they say it's also parampara, like from Dattatreya, Guru Tattva, something they talk about. I don't understand really. Do you have
Okay,
any?
so first of all, should we leave people to their fate? The answer is yes. Yeah, we should leave people to their faith by giving them an opportunity to come to us, by inviting them for very good prasadam and kirtan. Kṛṣṇa says this in the Bhagavad Gita. We don't want to disturb the faith of others. So we don't want to challenge them to the point where they give up what they're doing and they don't even do what we are asking them to do. This is very possible. So it's very important for us to simply inculcate and give them an experience of Kṛṣṇa consciousness, instead of trying to hit them with intellectual points, because the moment you start doing it, then it's an endless cycle. They will produce this, they will produce that. So it's not something which we should attempt to do. As a preaching strategy, what is best to do is to give them an experience of kirtan, give them an experience of prasadam, and then slowly, steadily, if they feel enthused about our company, if they get enthused and inspired by who we are, they would also want to do what we are doing. Until then, let them do what they're doing, because at least they're doing something. Right? So that's the point I want to make. Does it make sense?
Yes, so we don't need to get disturbed by people praying to different these things. And anyways, because we can't make change, it's no point in bringing such discussions. This is wrong.
We don't need to, because you see, one of the most effective and most important points I want to make, many devotees who were a part of the different groups I have preached to in all these years were all devotees of Shirdi Sai Baba. Many of them. And they were very sincere with his worship. And when our preaching started and we started talking to them, they found it very natural to take up Kṛṣṇa consciousness. There was no pressure, there was no putting down Baba, there was no such thing. They very naturally took up. So what I'm saying is, some authentic arrangements are being made in the universe. And Shirdi Sai Baba, for instance, was one of the few people in the early 19th century who actually preached the Bhagavad Gita, amongst both Muslims and Hindus, which is what I've read. The point is, that in itself is an extraordinary achievement, especially in the early 19th century, to recognize how to basically bring people in line and how to bring everybody together. So the point which I'm trying to make is that we can't deny the fact that there are some divine experiences which others would have in the company of, or in the appreciation of Shirdi Baba. We can't really deny that, because it exists there. It's very powerful. So as a consequence, what I'm trying to say is that there are many devotees who have come to us from that particular group, which essentially I would take as that he acted as a guru and guided them towards wherever Krishna is worshipped authentically. You will find that. So what I'm saying is, I don't see resistance there. So it is better to just give them very good experiences of Krishna consciousness and encourage them, and they would come to appreciate what we have to offer, rather than becoming confrontational and trying to say, oh, you're wrong because there isn't a mention of Shirdi Sai Baba in Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam. There is definitely a link between Shirdi Sai Baba and Lord Dattatreya. There's no doubt about it. There's a link.
Okay.
Yeah. Not by parampara. He basically manifested many such, I would say, attributes of Lord Dattatreya. So he basically had some empowerment from Lord Dattatreya, to say the very least. So
Yes.
the point I'm trying to make is that he basically was able to take, wear the garb of a Muslim and then preach Vedic culture, in that particular place. And this is so fascinating. And especially what is important for us to understand is, if devotees come from that particular group undisturbed, they feel motivated to come and join Krishna consciousness, it is because of whom they are in touch with. And that person is encouraging them, they're removing their difficulties, saying, go. Now this is more authentic. Go there. Yeah?
Yes.
So that's the point I want to make. So we want to appreciate it, and we want to basically not interfere with faith, but give them a good experience of Krishna consciousness where they are able to come and join us because they're inspired by us. See, ultimately, spiritual practice is by inspiration. Who inspires whom? It cannot be guided by rules and regulations. Inspiration is a matter of the soul and Krishna. Krishna can use anybody to inspire others, to bring them closer to him. So we can't really say that you shouldn't be inspired by this person. What we should do is basically open the doors where people can be inspired by us. And if we fail in inspiring them, let them have shelter of someone else who is inspiring them. This should be our approach. This is completely non-political, and this is the appropriate Vedic standard. And this is how souls with faith moved around in the past in Vedic culture. There was a lot of cooperation amongst the different spiritual cycles, spiritual masters. There's so much cooperation amongst the demigods and Krishna, where someone who is very sincere in worshipping the demigods, and they stop asking for things from the demigods somehow or the other connect them to Krishna, because now they say, now the time has come for you to really experience the fruits of your bhakti. Your bhakti belongs to my master, even though you're worshipping me, but because you've stopped asking for things from me, it means you're qualified to move further. So that devotee is taken by the demigods whom they were worshipping, they are introduced into Krishna consciousness. So does it make sense?
Yes, bro. Yes, but what I believe is like maybe Sai Baba himself never asked the people to worship him. Maybe these people made up all these traditions. That's what
Possible. You see, the point is that there are different gradations. It's quite possible that nobody, for example, Lord Chaitanya never claimed that he was an incarnation. Never did.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand? But then scriptures have so many different descriptions of Lord Chaitanya's presence on the planet, about his coming, so many different descriptions of the Lord's appearance. So he never ever wanted that position. He basically always played the role of a devotee. But we knew that he is Krishna himself and Radharani is mood. So we basically looked at scripture and we accepted him as that. So we have to understand that there is both.
Mm-hmm.
And Krishna also says in Srimad Bhagavatam and in Bhagavad Gita, we talk about limited number of avatars. Don't we? We talk about limited number of avatars.
Yes, bro.
Krishna himself says that I have appeared in millions and millions of incarnations. So there could be more than what we are given to understand. It doesn't mean we accept everything, but at the same time, what we do is, if there is a mass amount of people going and getting faith, and they are able to move towards Krishna consciousness eventually, then it is not such a bad thing. That's the point I'm trying to make. That's all.
Yes, bro. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Sure.
Hare Krishna. It's Lakshmi speaking.
Lakshmi, I can't hear you. Sorry.
Is that better?
Just a little better.
Okay.
I'm going to strain my ears. Yeah.
Now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in response to an earlier question, you were talking about how people can choose where in the spiritual world they go to. For example, like Vaikuntha or Goloktam. Because my understanding was like, so we all have a spiritual identity. So maybe someone, like for example, might be like grass or something in the spiritual world. So then, does that mean like if they went to Vaikuntha, there'd be grass over there? Like, how does it work like that?
Yeah, I understand. So your question is, if we have an eternal place in the spiritual sky, then how is that connected to our process in one sense? Yeah. So whether we are conditioned by material energy, are we eternal by nature? The soul is eternal by nature. Whether we have had an experience of the spiritual sky and have we been in the spiritual sky in a specific state, we have to understand it from a different perspective, because ontologically, when we use the word eternal, it can mean many things. If I say that Lord Brahma's day is billions of years, for you and me, or for many people, practically every one of us, that's like infinity. That's eternal. But that's just one day of Lord Brahma. Imagine an entire lifetime of Lord Brahma. Then that's eternity. But that's also not the actual definition, because Lord Brahma leaves and he also goes back after certain periods of existence. So the point I'm just trying to make is, the first point is eternal. What is the meaning of eternal? That's a relative, and that's a very contextual word, and we should use it in the context, contextually. So to talk to you about our original position in the spiritual sky is also a matter of us being able to evolve into a specific role. The motivation comes in different ways. For example, if we come into our parampara, then we practically are moving towards Goloka. And because our worship, our chanting of the mantras, the initiation that we receive, everything is taking us towards Goloka. Now, can someone from Vaikuntha come to Goloka? They can. They can. This is what we read about Gopakumar's transition in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Brihad Bhagavatamrita was authored by Sanatana Goswami. Basically, it was translated and authored by Sanatana Goswami. So basically, what we're trying to say is that the Brihad Bhagavatamrita talks about the journey of a soul, where he goes to each and every station. First, he goes to Kailash, and he basically gets the experience of being an eternal associate of Lord Shiva. But he's chanting a mantra which is connected to the Goloka realm. So he is not really satisfied being there, and Lord Shiva gives him blessings and tells him, proceed. So he then goes to different avatars. He basically goes to experience the Vaikuntha planets, and then eventually his dissatisfaction in the Vaikuntha planets, he continues chanting, and he goes higher to Goloka, where Kṛṣṇa embraces him. Have you come across the picture of Kṛṣṇa embracing a cowherd boy, surrounded by his friends? That is Gopakumar being embraced by him. So that's basically, I'm just taking that as an example, saying there is the prospect of evolution, which allows us to go from one particular part of the spiritual sky to other based on our desires, especially if you have a mantra as powerful as the mantra that is given in our parampara, which can take us all the way to Goloka. If we choose to stop on the way, it is fine. But if we are not satisfied, the mantra has the capacity to take us to higher and higher realms. Does that make sense?
Yes, thanks.
So not fully. So we'll touch upon this topic as we go along, Lakshmi. Yeah, because, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, like if, for example, that person was in went to Vaikuntha before going to Golok, then would they, if for example their spiritual identity is like as a tree or as a monkey, then would they have that like form in Vaikuntha, or would they kind of like have a different form there and then a different form in Golok?
I think it could be different, because they could be surrounded by people who are of a certain form, because for different services you need different forms.
Okay.
Lord Narayan may not have much use for monkeys.
Mhm.
So he might just say that I have no use for a monkey. In Vaikuntha, you perhaps need to go to Goloka if you want to be a monkey. Does it make sense? What I'm saying is basically there can be different personalities who have different forms. At different places you have different uses. For service you have to have a certain kind of dress. So for example, when we come and want to do pujari service, then we have a certain attire, we have a certain kind of dress for us to engage in. In a similar fashion, different services to different aspects of expansions of the Lord in that particular realm might require representation. So it need not be the same, is the point I'm trying to convey.
Okay, thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Sorry?
Yes, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, this is, I can't hear you, Lakshmi, but it is okay. I don't know what, maybe you could type out. Is there any other question or comment we want to talk about?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes.
Yeah, it's connected to the other worshippers coming to Krishna consciousness. I was just thinking, it's all about your desire. Like when you, okay, if you're praying to Lord Shiva, asking different things, or otherwise you are asking questions. Okay, what I should do in my life? What is my next I should be doing? So it's different. And oh, you go and ask, I need this. I need a house. I need a wife. I need a husband. So according to that, the demigod will respond to you, isn't it? Is it correct, Prabhu?
Yes, to some extent. Yeah, could you put yourself on mute, please?
Yeah, sorry, Prabhu.
Okay, so to some extent it is true, where it is not so much a matter of desiring, it's a matter of sincerity with Lord Shiva. When someone is worshipping him with great sincerity, Lord Shiva would give him an opportunity to experience things in different realms. That's the point. It's a matter of sincerity, saying it's a gift. Okay, you're now ready to receive a gift from me. This is my gift. I am chanting this mantra, and this is where the highest pleasure is. Because you're so sincere, I want you to also experience this.
Okay, so
That's
your
all it is.
desiring is not important there?
It is important there as well. But then it's important there where you really want eager and more eager for us to experience Godhead. Yeah? There's a greater and greater eagerness for us to understand and experience Godhead. That is when Shiva, Lord Shiva would also basically extend opportunities for us. It's a gift. Desiring is always important, but it's a gift as well. That's the point I'm trying to make. Both.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Sure. Any other question? Okay, so we'll end our conversation here, and we'll meet again the following week. So thank you very much for participating. I appreciate your presence. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you,
Thank
Prabhu.
you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.